What's going on, everyone? This is Furrowh, and we are back again for more tips on professionalism. Today's session is all about motivation in the workforce. What's going to keep you motivated to go to work? What's going to keep you motivated to stay at work? And what's going to keep you motivated to apply for your next job? And so my breakdown for today's message on motivation has a lot to do with your fruitfulness. When you think about your fruitfulness, think about the essence that you bring to a temporary atmosphere, but also think about the seeds that you're sowing for the long term. When you think about your skills and your abilities, think about what do you bring to the table? What can you provide to a work atmosphere to make it better? This is the whole concept of cultivating something. It's your ability to make an atmosphere or a situation better. So how do you do that? When you walk into a room, whether you're in the classroom or you're on the job, what influence do you have on the environment around you that makes it better? Do you make it lighter? Do you make it more positive? What do you do that makes the atmosphere around you better? Do you inspire people to work harder or work smarter or just all around be a better version of themselves? So as we think about how we are being motivated, we also have to think about how we intend to motivate others. What do we leave behind when we exit a room or we exit a situation? When you leave a job, did you submit your ideas and your creativity to make that work atmosphere better or to make the company run even smoother? As I mentioned in previous videos, our attitude is, like they say, our altitude. It determines how high we go in life. So if you think negatively or if your attitude is negative, then don't question why negative things keep happening to you. If you haven't changed your mind, then you won't change your results. However, if you come in with a positive attitude, if you encourage other people to be the better version of themselves, you'd be surprised the results that you'll get. Now, granted, you're going to have some haters, even when you're being positive and possibly even doing everything right. But that's when your self-motivation comes in. Now, granted, you're going to have some haters. Some people are going to be negative against you, even when you're possibly doing everything right, or you're just going around showing a positive attitude. But that's when your self-motivation needs to kick in. When I face these issues dealing with people who want to be negative, even when I'm being positive, I question my authenticity. If I'm going to stay motivated throughout the day, even in the midst of the haters, then I have to make sure that I'm being my authentic self. The last thing that I want to do is look back on a situation and realize that I wasn't being myself. If I'm going to be wrong or if I'm going to be right, I'm going to be authentic. And so I want to encourage you, as you are thinking about your fruitfulness, as you are thinking about how to keep yourself motivated throughout the day, my very first tip would be for you to be authentic. Now, this isn't one of those things where it's about keeping it real all the time and telling everybody how you feel. And even if it's negative, letting people know what's on your mind and how you can't stand them and how they get on your nerves. This is more about making sure that you challenge yourself to be better. When you're being your authentic self, when we think about this whole thing with authenticity, it's really about your ability to not treat a situation like somebody else would. I remember dealing with a conflict on the job before, and I was advised by someone I respected to handle the situation a certain way, which was really, instead of talking to that person, it was about email trails and writing things up. And it was very impersonal and it was very cold and it did not feel authentic at all. And it ended up making the relationship that I had with the person worse. It didn't make the situation better. And I started to realize, looking back on it, that I wasn't being authentic. I wasn't being my true self. Instead, I was using other people's weapons to fight my battles. When the truth is that my style, authentically, is more up close and personal. It's getting to the root of the issue and developing a common ground for understanding. I think that when we're not authentic, it makes looking back on situations harder. Even Lauryn Hill says, the real you is better than the fake somebody else. So be authentically you. When you're authentically you, you're using your personal strengths, you're acknowledging your weaknesses as well, or the things that you need to work on, and you're rolling all of that up into a response. How you respond to different situations, whether it's dealing with an angry coworker or dealing with an angry customer, or just responding to the positivity. However you respond to the atmosphere should be authentically you. That's all about your essence. So tip number 1 is for you to be authentic. Whether you're dealing with a positive or a negative work atmosphere, do your best to be the best version of yourself, not somebody else. Tip number 2 is to think long term. Tip number 2 is to think long term. Oftentimes I ask myself when I encounter a situation, will this matter 5 minutes from now, 5 months from now, 5 years from now? And if you know me, you'll probably hear me say, this situation is a rock on my island of my ocean. It's not that big. And so, how do you handle small situations? The way that you handle small situations will eventually be the same manner in which you handle large situations. So, whether it's making sure that you're showing up to work on time, or making sure that your response to customers and clients and coworkers is appropriate. How you deal with things on a small scale will eventually determine how you deal with things on a large scale. Try not to have this mindset that when you make it big, that's when you'll do it right. Because the truth is, the details are always in the small things. And so, if you mismanage $5, then you'll probably mismanage $5,000 or $500,000. So please don't think that when the situation changes, that's when your habits will change. Your habits have to change on a small level in order for you to be confident that it will change on a larger level. When you're thinking about long-term and preparing for your future, you can ask yourself, would your current supervisor be willing to write you a letter of recommendation? Or would they say, you have a poor attitude, you don't show up on time, you don't work well with others? What would your current supervisor say about you for your next job? There are such things as letters of recommendation or reference letters. And some employers check back with your previous employers to see how well you performed on the job. So it goes back to what we talked about earlier, which was leaving a situation or an atmosphere better than the way that you found it. Have that level of influence on the atmosphere that people want to recommend you for things that are greater or better. Have a level of influence on the atmosphere where people around you want to recommend you for something better. That's sowing the seed. The law of harvest. What you sow now, you will reap later. And so, if you're sowing seeds of positivity, then what you'll reap later is more positivity, and more than likely on a greater scale. But if the seeds that you're sowing are about being unreliable or negative, then you will reap that in the future. And sometimes it's when you least expect it. So be cautious and be careful about the things that you put into the atmosphere now. Your seeds are about long-term results. How you talk to others, how you treat others, how you make other people feel, that's going to have a long-term effect on your life. So remember the law of harvest. What you sow is what you'll reap. The seeds that you put out into the world will eventually come back to you in time. So to recap, tip number 2 is about thinking long-term. Think ahead to your next job or your job after that, your future career. Think about the people that you want a relationship with in the long term. The way that you treat them now will determine the way that they respond to you in the future. So tip number 2, think long term. Tip number 3 is to have a positive response to pressure. Tip number 3 is about having a positive response to pressure. Throughout your life, you will receive some constructive criticism. Hopefully, a lot more of constructive criticism than destructive criticism. You know, those people who just want to tear you down without trying to make sure that you're becoming a better person. They're just throwing their opinion on you just for their own purposes. When you face constructive criticism, there is this challenge to become a better person, a better version of yourself. Maybe there's something that you could write a little neater, some words that you could say with a little bit more enunciation. What are some things that you can do better? We can always improve, we can always learn. And if you're lucky, you'll find someone in life who wants to see you do better, who wants to see you improve upon the skills that you may already have. And so it is my goal that you will eventually learn how to acknowledge good pressure when someone is trying to build you up. And it may feel like they're trying to tear you down at times, but take a close look at what that person's intentions are behind their criticism. Think about this lemon. In order for me to get the juice out of this lemon, in order for me to get the seeds out of this lemon, I will have to either peel it back or cut through the lemon. And then I have to squeeze it. And that squeeze is the pressure. It's getting the best out of it. It's getting the most out of a situation. I know you've heard the term before. When life gives you lemons, that's when you make lemonade. But it's the pressure, right? When life gives you something bitter, you take it and you make the most out of it. And so hopefully you will find people in your life whose intentions are to get the most out of you. And even when we squeeze the lemon, you get two things. You get the juice, which is its essence, it's its response to the atmosphere. It's what is poured out temporarily and can be used. It's its response to the pressure. It's how it affects the atmosphere immediately. When I squeeze out the lemon, I can use the juice right away, but I can't use the seeds right away. So when I squeeze the lemon, I get two things. I get the juice, I get its essence, the pulp, and then I also get the seed. The seed isn't for now. If you're wise with the seed, you'll plant it and you'll cultivate it and you'll make sure that it is growing effectively so that it can be used later to produce more fruit. So when you're thinking about things long term, when you're responding to positive pressure, when you're planting the seed, you're letting other people know how you respond to certain situations. And that in turn will let them know if they can trust you with more or less. It will take some wisdom and maturing to see who's trying to get the best out of you versus who's trying to best you, who's trying to build you versus who's trying to break you. But it is my hopes that in your life you will find more people who are trying to build you up than break you down. And when you do find those people who you know their intent is to break you down, keep your distance. Don't let them affect your seed, your fruitfulness, your essence. Keep your space and try to connect with people who are trying to be positive. So tip number 3 is all about acknowledging good pressure and the purpose behind pressure. It is to get the best out of you, the best essence and the best seeds. My final tip for motivation in the workforce is not easy. It's difficult for a lot of people, no matter how old you are, to do. But it is so important for you to know how to encourage yourself. There will be times where the challenges that you face on the job or in the classroom or even outside in your personal life will have a negative effect on you. There will be people who will bring a level of toxicity to the work atmosphere because that's just who they are as people. They're negative. You will run into people who are just so unhappy with their lives or so used to tearing other people down that it will take its toll on you. There are people that you will encounter in life who are so used to being negative and toxic and used to bringing people down that that's just their nature. And it will take its toll on you. No matter how logical you can be about it, there are people out there who just have a negative energy. And in those times when you encounter people, whether they be clients or customers or co-workers or even your supervisors, and you find that their level of being toxic hurts your feelings or makes you feel a certain way, those are the times where you have to use positive words to yourself for yourself. So my tip to you is for you to encourage yourself. Speak well about yourself to yourself. It's that self-talk, the things that you tell yourself in your head. So if you tell yourself negative things, and then someone else comes around and tells you those same negative things, it can trigger an emotional response. However, if you spend your time building up yourself, telling yourself you're great, telling yourself that you're important, telling yourself that you're amazing, you're phenomenal, that you're cared about, that you're loved, then it makes facing people who have toxic intentions easier. It doesn't mean that you will be completely unaffected by other people, but it will be easier to allow it to roll off of you because of the way that you've encouraged yourself and built yourself up. Think about a building that was made out of bricks versus a building that was made out of stone. When you encourage yourself, you're actually building a foundation for your self-esteem. And self-esteem is important to have in the work atmosphere. If we were to think of things in a figurative sense, when you think about a storm and how a house is affected by a really, really bad storm, really, really strong winds like a hurricane or a tornado, when that hurricane or tornado passes, what's left, what's still standing is the foundation. If the foundation of the house is strong, then the house can be built upon over and over again. But if the foundation of the house is weak, then the storm is likely to destroy everything in the house. And you are the house in this scenario. The stronger you build your foundation, the more likely your house will stand. The more likely you'll be able to face pressure, whether it be good or bad. The stronger your mental and emotional foundation, the less likely you are that you will crumble under the toxicity of others. When other people are being negative, it won't tear your house down because you have built yourself up with encouragement and reminding yourself how important you are. So let's recap. Tip number 1, be authentic. Make sure that in any situation, you're being the best version of yourself and not somebody else. Tip number 2, think long term. Think ahead for the next job, the next career. Tip number 2, think long term. Think about what people will say a year from now, 5 years from now about your performance today. How did you leave an impact? What seeds did you sow that will produce a harvest for you in the future? Tip number 3 is about acknowledging good pressure. Remember, not everything that comes against you is meant to break you. It could just be meant to squeeze the best out of you. Tip number 4 is for you to learn how to encourage yourself. Build yourself up with your words and the way that you treat yourself. Make it a standard to treat yourself well so that when other people don't treat you well, you can let them know that's not accepted here. Again, it is my hopes that you will take these tips and apply them to your life so that they will make you a better working professional and hopefully even a better person. So until next time, be kind, be considerate, and be encouraged.